Toss the gun. Juice, just toss it.
He was a sports icon with movie star good looks.
OJ had an easygoing charm. He had charisma.
She was a beautiful ex-wife who appeared to have it all.
Nicole was only 18 years old, and she was a waitress in a nightclub when OJ Simpson walks in, and he was infatuated.
The gruesome double homicide leads to an infamous car chase.
This is AC. I have OJ in the car.
I'm assuming he's going to attempt suicide or something.
The world watches as everyone's on trial.
I get personally upset when someone accuses me of planting evidence.
And it's up to a determined detective to sort out the truth from the drama.
The DNA evidence in this case was very clear. We only had 3 people involved, 1 suspect and 2 victims.
Who killed Nicole Brown Simpson? It's 3 a.m., and while the city slumbers, LAPD Detective Tom Lange, a 16-year veteran of the Homicide Department, is on the move.
I was first notified that a double homicide had occurred about 3 a.m. in the West LA area.
In the wealthy suburb of Brentwood, police have discovered 2 bodies in a pool of blood.
When I got there, the scene had already been secured. We saw 2 bodies. One was on the front porch area where the front door was. She was barefooted. She was brutally slashed. It appeared that she was just about decapitated. I could view her vertebrae through the front of her neck.
The female victim is 35-year-old Nicole Brown, O.J. Simpson's ex-wife, and the mother of his children. To Nicole's right, Lange sees a second body.
He had defense wounds on his hands, as if to defend things off.
Lange finds a driver's license in the man's wallet. He is 25-year-old Ronald Goldman. It's unclear to Lange who Ron Goldman is or why he's been killed alongside Nicole Brown. But the crime scene is littered with clues.
There's a glove, a left-handed glove. We were also showing other evidence there, like a knit cap. There's a pair of prescription glasses lying there, which was of great interest.
How the envelope and glasses got there is a mystery, as is the identity of the killer. But the physical evidence tells Detective Lange that whoever murdered Goldman and Brown fled out the back gate.
There were a series of footwear impressions leading to the rear of the residence.
Just as Lange's investigation gets underway, TV cameras appear at the scene.
So the media shows up. They start sitting up on a little knoll, 15 feet high, looking down on the crime scene. We do not want them shooting the victims. It's bad enough to see your loved one on television.
Detective Lange needs to know more about the victims to help him solve this gruesome murder.
Nicole was only 18 years old, and she was a waitress in a nightclub when O.J. Simpson walks in, and he was infatuated immediately, and they started dating, even though O.J. was still married to Marguerite. The relationship with Nicole took off very quickly. O.J. and Nicole were married for 7 years, and they had a daughter, Sydney, and a son, Justin.
When the marriage ended, Nicole got primary custody of the kids. And now Lange finds this young mother dead on her front porch, while her children, just 6 and 8 years old, sleep inside.
We still had a primary responsibility to watch out for the welfare of the kids. So the next priority became contact Simpson. We don't know anything yet, quite frankly, but I have to make this notification because I'm going to do it before the media gets to you.
Lange and his colleagues drive to O.J. Simpson's Rockingham estate to have him take custody of his children.
We approach Rockingham, and going up the street, we see a white Bronco that looks parked a little askew. It appears that whoever parked that car was in a little bit of a hurry.
Lange confirms it's OJ's Bronco, while Detective Mark Fleeman looks over the vehicle.
Fleeman is on the other side of the door, and he sees a spot right below the handle of the Bronco that appears to be blood. We don't like the looks of this. If someone could be in danger, someone's harmed or gonna be harmed, you act now. We go to the front, bang on the door. Nobody's answering. So I'm thinking, we have a problem. We have O.J. Simpson inside, maybe he's dead too.
Lange and his partners fan out and check guest quarters at the back of OJ's estate.
There's 3 bungalows. We go to the first bungalow and knock on the bungalow, and Cato Kalin comes to the door. He's out of it, he doesn't know what's going on.
We're looking for Mr. O.J. Simpson. Do you know where he is?
Cato Kalin was a very common figure in Hollywood. He's a personal assistant. He was part of the household staff.
We explained to him, we're the police, we're here to look into a situation. Is O.J. Simpson inside? He's getting his wits about him. Finally, he says, oh, no, he put on a plane last night. He's in Chicago. Meanwhile, we're also getting hold of Simpson in Chicago. He tells him Nicole has died. He said, we would like you to come back as soon as you can because we have your children. Simpson says, okay, I'll get back on the next plane.
Meanwhile, Cato tells Lange he heard something strange earlier that evening.
Cato told me that last night there was a little bit of a shaking in his wall behind his bed, and there were like 3 bumps, almost like someone was out there.
Detective Mark Fleeman goes around back to investigate.
Before he proceeds down the walkway, he looks down and he sees a leather glove. He looks at the leather glove and he thinks, well, leather glove here, leather glove at Bundy. We all take a look at the glove and we can tell that there's blood on the glove. You put that together with what appears to be a blood spot on the Bronco, we have a crime scene. Simpson was no doubt the suspect.
O.J. Simpson is an all-American hero.
O.J. grew up in the housing projects of San Francisco. He was surrounded by poverty and crime, and football was his ticket out. At the height of his fame, O.J. Simpson, frankly, was one of the best football players of all time.
I watched O.J. Simpson as a kid. I used to love him as a ball player.
And he transcended sports. He was one of those first sports figures who was able to cash in on his gridiron fame and become a TV pitchman. People could watch him and cheer for him during a football game, and then they could watch him and admire him and love him on television. O.J. had an easygoing charm. He had charisma. He had that smile that was very endearing to people.
Hey, Panama City.
Now, O.J. Simpson's ex-wife is dead, along with her friend Ron Goldman. And O.J. is the prime suspect. Only 3 hours after Detective Lange arrived on the crime scene, O.J. Simpson is aboard a flight from Chicago to Los Angeles. It's early morning in L.A., but Lange still hasn't slept. He needs to notify Nicole's family before the media does, and find out where Nicole was before she was murdered.
I never want to do this, but I had to make a death notification over the phone. This is the last thing any cop wants to do. I said to the Browns that Nicole is dead. It's not in those words, something like that. I hear all of this screaming and hollering on the other line. He did it. It was O.J. I know it. He finally did it. He said he was going to kill her, and he killed her, and she's screaming and hollering like this. So that was the first inkling that I had. Well, perhaps we got a lot to do here. We got a lot to learn. We don't know about this.
Is that the last time you saw her or spoke to her?
Lange asks Judith Brown where her daughter Nicole was on the night of the murder.
The night of the murder, there was a dance recital for Nicole and OJ's daughter at a middle school in Brentwood. OJ showed up, taking part in the children's family activities.
OJ and Nicole have been divorced for 2 years, but both parents spend time with the children.
If there was any tension the night of the recital, it would have been the usual kind of ex-wife, ex-husband, let's try to hold it together for the sake of the children tension.
Nicole's mother tells Lange that OJ left after the recital, while the rest of the family went for dinner at Mezzaluna Restaurant, where Nicole's friend, Ron Goldman, was their waiter.
When dinner was over, they left the restaurant, and apparently Judita, Nicole's mom, dropped her eyeglasses in the street, like right off the curb, and Nicole had called the restaurant to ask if they found him.
Ron is there, he's about to get off. He says, I'll take care of it.
Goldman heads straight to Nicole's condo after work, where Nicole has run a bath and is waiting for him.
Ron and Nicole, at the very least, were friends. That has been established.
There are lots of people that have tried to link my brother and Nicole up and create some kind of romantic involvement between the two of them, because Nicole's house, when the police arrived, there was a tub full of water and candles that were burning, and she was not married. My brother was not married. They were both of consensual age.
At 10:45 p.m., Goldman arrives at Nicole's home.
My brother walked into what we believe was Nicole being attacked, and my brother stayed to fight and try to save his friend.
Goldman was stabbed several times, slash wounds to the neck. There were 4 fatal stab wounds to Goldman.
The bloody envelope was the envelope with the glasses in it. My brother had them in his hands.
Now, 25-year-old Ron Goldman is dead.
My brother, Ron, 3.5 years older. He was very protective, always looking out for me. My dad just blurted out that Ron died, and I remember just kind of falling to the ground and kind of like in this spiral, and I don't know if I screamed out loud or if I just was internally screaming. I don't really remember.
The nature of Ron and Nicole's wounds tells Lange the killer knew his victims.
These victims were slashed numerous times, stabbed numerous times, one almost decapitated. This is something very personal.
But why was Ron Goldman killed? Was he an accidental victim? Or was he targeted alongside Nicole? LAPD Detective Tom Lange is on the hunt for a killer in a brutal double homicide. The victims are Nicole Brown Simpson, wife of football star O.J. Simpson, and her friend, Ronald Goldman. With blood on his Bronco and a matching bloody glove found in his yard, O.J. is the prime suspect. By 9 a.m., Lange has a warrant to search O.J.'s estate for more evidence that could tie him to murder.
We find a trail of blood that goes from the Bronco, tailing from the Bronco up the driveway, into the alcove, and right into the house. We find a pair of socks, appear to be Simpson's, on his bedroom floor. We find blood on the socks.
The evidence against O.J. is piling up, but Lange must still place him at the crime scene at the time of the murder. A coroner's exam and a neighbor's testimony help Lange narrow down the time of death.
I think these murders probably occurred around 10:35, 10:36. We also got a man walking his dogs who hears some yelling and hollering that he believes was Simpson.
Where was O.J. Simpson at 10:35 that night?
Cato told us that he and Simpson had left earlier that evening and gotten burgers at a local drive-thru. He thinks around 10 or so, Simpson leaves for the airport.
O.J. Simpson has an alibi.
There is no hard evidence to put on this man at this time.
The day after the murders, at around noon, O.J. is back in L.A. He arrives to a barrage of reporters and goes straight home to face off against Detective Lange.
Do you mind if I ask you a few questions?
Anything.
When was the last time that you saw Nicole?
I last saw Nicole after our daughter's recital.
Simpson told us that the night of the murders, he went to a recital for Sydney, his daughter, locally. He said after that, the Browns and Nicole went for dinner. They asked me to go along, but I refused. That was a lie.
According to O.J., that was the last time he saw his beautiful ex-wife alive. Later that night, after O.J. meets up with Cato, he heads home to get ready for his trip to Chicago.
Simpson alludes to being inside the house, getting ready to go. He says, well, I was rushing around getting ready to go, waiting for the chauffeur.
What time did you leave last night? Leave the house?
To go to the airport.
Mm-hmm.
About, the limo was supposed to be there at 10:45. Normally they get there a little earlier. I was rushing around, and somewhere between there and 11 o'clock.
O.J. confirms his alibi, but Lange probes deeper into O.J.'s relationship with Nicole. He asks whether O.J. ever struck his ex-wife.
Has there ever been any domestic abuse in this relationship, OJ?
Well, there are times where we've had arguments, and Nicole would attack me. She'd hit me, but I would block them and maybe wrestle her down just to stop the fight.
He basically says he'd never hit Nicole.
Then Lange sees something strange.
What happened to your finger?
We look at him and we know he's bleeding on the middle finger of the left hand, okay? Which is very interesting. We got a left glove at the scene. The glove may have been lost during the fight, and then he cut it when the knife came out, perhaps.
How did you get the injury on your hand?
I don't know. At the house, I was just running around.
We've got some blood on and in your car. We've got some blood at your house, and sort of a problem.
Lange takes blood and fingerprint samples, but he is forced to let O.J. go.
We're not going to arrest him. Nothing to arrest him on.
While lab technicians determine whose blood is dripped all over O.J.'s mansion, news of the sensational double murder floods the LAPD with phone calls.
During any high-profile investigation, you're going to get clues. People are going to call in for many reasons. So we had some 518 of these so-called clues.
One clue stands out above the others.
One of these was Jason Simpson, who happens to be O.J.'s grown son.
A former LAPD officer spoke to Nicole Simpson before her death and tells Lange about the conversation.
Nicole said I might have been stalked by Jason.
Now, Lange wonders if perhaps Jason Simpson was the killer.
We're going to want to interview Jason Simpson. The problem with that was he got an attorney and would not allow us to interview him.
Does Jason Simpson have something to hide?
What made Jason a possible suspect is that he's in the inner circle. He's a family member. You always start with those close to the victim.
At the time of the murder, O.J.'s son Jason is a 24-year-old chef at Jackson's restaurant in Los Angeles. He is a troubled young man.
It's understandable why people might be looking at Jason Simpson. This is a man who had a criminal record for assaultive behavior.
2 months before the murders, Jason dragged his girlfriend out of her car and attacked her.
He, started to strangle a girlfriend. This is stuff consistent, I suppose, with carrying out the ultimate act of murder.
But for Lange, questions remain. Even if Jason has a history of violence, why would he attack Nicole?
Jason was the son from the first marriage. And then along came the second marriage and the younger and prettier new bride. And then along came these other kids. So it would not be uncommon to look at him and wonder, did he have any anger, resentment, frustration, whatever, directed toward Nicole?
Detective Lange discovers that on the night of the murders, Nicole may have triggered Jason Simpson's rage.
He was expecting Nicole, after her daughter's dance recital, to come to his restaurant, but Nicole then changed her mind and went to Mezzaluna. She kind of stood him up that night. So some believe that maybe he was upset.
Jason Simpson has been diagnosed with intermittent explosive disorder, a condition that predisposes him to violent outbursts.
He was mentally ill. He was taking medication, and so maybe he had, like a little breakdown and killed her because of it.
Lange checks the crime scene for evidence Jason was the killer.
This is with a knife, so this is a very personal killing.
When you're looking for suspects, you're looking for somebody also who has access to a weapon.
He was a chef. He had a collection of knives.
Jason still won't talk, but Lange's investigators question his colleagues at Jackson's restaurant. A coworker knows Jason wears size 12 shoes, the same size as the bloody footprint Lange found near Nicole's body.
Well, we're looking for a size 12 suspect.
Detective Lange considers the unthinkable. Perhaps Jason Simpson murdered his father's ex-wife.
Hey!
Los Angeles homicide detective Tom Lange is investigating an explosive double homicide. The ex-wife of football great O.J. Simpson has been found dead, with her friend Ron Goldman. Detective Lange wonders if O.J.'s son, Jason Simpson, was the killer.
Jason is O.J. Simpson's child from his first marriage. And so he had a little bit of a jealousy because his father had started another family and had small children. He was a chef, and he was expecting Nicole, after her daughter's dance recital, to come to his restaurant. But Nicole then changed her mind and went to Mezzaluna.
Even if Nicole's change of plans upset him, Jason's colleagues say he can't be the killer.
Jason had a very strong alibi.
During the background of Jason Simpson in our investigation, we found out he indeed was working that night at Jackson's restaurant.
After work, Jason's girlfriend drove him home, where they spent the evening watching television.
There is not one bit of evidence that shows Jason Simpson can be tied to these murders. There's no hard evidence, period.
For Lange, Jason Simpson is an investigative dead end. But until blood and DNA results are complete, there's no hard evidence against O.J. Simpson. Carl Douglas, one of Simpson's lawyers, says O.J. could never hurt the mother of his children.
I can't fathom that O.J. Simpson would have ever left her mother's body when O.J.'s daughter, sleeping upstairs, could have come downstairs to find her mother's body. I don't believe for the life of me that a father would ever do that.
Lange.
LAPD homicide detective Tom Lange gets a string of new tips saying someone else committed the murders.
Yeah, there's a claim that drug dealing was involved.
One name keeps coming up: Faye Resnick.
There are some tips about Faye Resnick, who was a close friend of Nicole's. Obviously, we follow up on this, and Faye had a known problem with narcotics.
Faye Resnick met Nicole Brown soon after Nicole and O.J. Simpson divorced.
After the divorce, Nicole really kind of went wild, and she started having the life that she never had before because she married so young and had children so young. And Nicole really pushed it, and she was partying, and she was allegedly into drugs, and she was hanging out with a new group that included Faye Resnick, who was a runaway freight train with, horrible personal life and a raging drug problem, and she was crashing on Nicole's sofa just days before the murders.
Resnick stayed at Nicole's condo for 5 days and left just before the murders.
On the Thursday before the Sunday death, Nicole Brown Simpson and Faye Resnick's family and friends gathered at Nicole's house and had an intervention for Faye on that day.
Detective Lange must investigate whether Faye's drug problem attracted dangerous people to Nicole's front door.
An early theory was that Nicole was attacked by Colombian drug lord hit people, and that perhaps these drug hitmen were out looking for Faye Resnick, who had been living with Nicole, stumbled upon Nicole and murdered her in the very telltale fashion of the Colombian drug lords.
The cut around Nicole's neck is a deep crescent-shaped wound, what drug cartels refer to as a Colombian necktie.
Colombians were known in the drug trade when someone might be suspected of being a snitch to cut their neck and to use their tongue and put it through the opening of their neck. And that was called a Colombian necktie.
Were Nicole and Ron Goldman killed by a group of hitmen?
There was a witness that we had learned about that had been around the area of Bundy around the time of the murders, that had seen several men running away with knit caps on their heads.
Yeah, there was a claim by someone that drug dealing was involved and they observed people running from the scene. This was never substantiated.
And Lange says the evidence shows that there was only one killer.
The evidence at the crime scene showed us without any doubt that there was one perpetrator because there was only one set of footwear impressions moving about between the two victims.
According to Lange, professional hitmen don't leave a trail of clues.
This case did not fit anything, profile of any kind of a robbery or a drug hit or anything like that. You're not going to be up close and personal and leave all the evidence that was left in this case. If this is a mob hit, organized crime hit, a drug hit, you're not going to do that.
The theory that Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman were killed by drug dealers looking for Faye Resnick is ruled out.
We truly ruled her out and anyone else out, lack of evidence. Supposition is not evidence. Okay? We don't follow what somebody says. We follow the hard evidence.
With all the other suspects ruled out, Lange digs deeper into Nicole and O.J.'s past, and O.J.'s story starts to unravel.
Has there ever been any domestic abuse in this relationship, O.J.?
Well, there are times where we've had arguments, and Nicole would attack me. She'd hit me, but I would block them and maybe wrestle her down just to stop the fight.
O.J. says he never hit Nicole, but Lange discovers Simpson has a long history of wife abuse.
Several occurrences involving police intervention occurred with Nicole. We know that there was one officer who responded to the Rockingham address where Nicole had been beaten and she ran out and she was hiding in the bushes when the police got there.
She was literally beaten by O.J., she said. And there are photos that she kept to prove it. She kept a diary in which she accounted for the violence that she said he inflicted upon her.
According to Nicole's diaries, over the course of 15 years, O.J. subjected her to 62 incidents of violence and mistreatment.
We've got photographs taken by the police of her injuries. This goes back many times. There's several different incidents like this.
In 1989, Simpson was charged with spousal battery and sentenced to 120 hours of community service and a 2-year probation. Family members say O.J.'s threats escalated before the murder.
After the divorce, she still felt very uneasy, and family of Nicole believed they'd heard O.J. said something to the effect of, "If I ever catch you with another man, I'll kill you or hurt you."
Even with a history of violence, Lange still has no case if O.J. has an alibi. But then, a new witness comes forward, and the case against O.J. takes the first of many dramatic turns. Detective Tom Lange has confirmed O.J. Simpson has a history of violence against his ex-wife, but Lange still has no case if O.J. has an airtight alibi.
O.J.'s alibi was he was off to get hamburgers and he was getting ready to catch a flight to Chicago.
But Lange has a new witness who saw O.J. on the night of the murder.
Alan Park's story was critical because Alan was a limo driver and he was very cognizant of time. What Alan Park did was he basically destroyed any alibi that O.J. would hope to have.
Park says he arrived to take O.J. to the airport at 10:23 p.m.
He wasn't sure of the location on Rockingham, so he deliberately left early. And he got there early, and he tried to phone somebody inside, and nobody picked up. A few minutes later, Park identifies a black man, about 6 foot, 210 pounds, going into the house. That he is sure it was O.J. Simpson. He calls again. Simpson's on the phone.
Hey, sir, it's your ride to LAX.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm just in the shower. Been running around. Be right down.
Not a problem, sir. I'll be waiting.
And Simpson gives him this story about, oh, I just got out of the shower and I'm running around. Well, he knows better. He didn't get out of anything. He just walked in the front door. That was the significance of Alan Park.
Based on Park's testimony, O.J. came home at approximately 10:55 p.m., 20 minutes after Nicole and Ron Goldman were murdered just down the street.
It's perfect. You couldn't script something that fit any better.
It's a huge shift in the case. Now O.J. Simpson has a known history of violence and no alibi. To seal the case, Lange looks for evidence that places O.J. at the scene of the crime.
Bloody footprints at the scene of the crime were found to have been made by Bruno Mali's shoes, a very rare and unusual type of shoe. So if they could find the person who wore those shoes, they could find the killer.
Lange works his leads, hoping to find a picture of O.J. wearing Bruno Mali's, but he comes up empty-handed.
Police were unable to link those shoes to O.J. Simpson, and for all the time he spent on television, all the times he had been photographed, nobody at the time of the criminal trial could produce a single picture of O.J. in those kinds of shoes.
It's a setback, but Lange soon gets the hard evidence he needs.
Well, the blood work came back, and it showed O.J. Simpson's blood was all over the crime scene. The DNA evidence in this case was very clear.
DNA testing of the blood on the glove found at O.J.'s house came up with matches to Nicole, Ron, and O.J.
We find a pair of socks, appear to be Simpson's, on his bedroom floor. We find blood on the socks, Nicole's blood. DNA evidence on the socks in his room was all from Nicole. We only had 3 people involved, 1 suspect and the 2 victims. That was the only DNA involved in all of this blood, period.
The DA's office writes a warrant for O.J.'s arrest, but instead of apprehending him, police ask O.J. to surrender himself at LAPD headquarters.
I have an official announcement from the Los Angeles Police Department.
O.J. Simpson's surrender was this typical celebrity moment. The police were going easy on him because he was famous.
He was to turn himself in the following morning after the case was filed.
Instead of turning himself in, Simpson goes on the run.
He flew the coupe, got in the Bronco with AC Cowlings at the wheel, and started driving toward Mexico.
I was in the office when this happened. I saw it on our television up on the wall. So the Orange County Sheriff spotted the car, and to say they went in pursuit, 20-mile-an-hour pursuit, which is very slow for any pursuit, let alone the freeway. First information is Simpson has a gun. He's put it to his head, he's waving it around. You got a gun, you gotta assume it's real. You gotta assume it's loaded. Now you assume he's gonna use it. I'm assuming he's gonna attempt suicide or something. How's it gonna play out?
The spectacle captivates the nation, with 95 million people tuned in.
This thing became a surreal, bizarre incident with people cheering on the side of the freeway and signs, "Go Juice, go."
For some, it's entertainment. For others, it's just another example of police racism.
The murders happened 2 years after the Rodney King verdicts, and the city erupted into riots. Los Angeles was on edge still, and there was a huge racial divide and a huge divide between the black community and the police department at the time of the murders. Here was the police coming down, unfairly treating another black man, and in this case, a famous black man.
Tom Lange has only one mission: keep O.J. alive.
First vow I ever took was to protect and serve. So that was all that was on my mind. But it wasn't just him. How about the cops behind him? These cops aren't gonna say, please put down the gun. He jumps out with a gun, they're gonna nail him.
I remember my dad and I were adamant that no, don't shoot him, because then we're never gonna know what happened. We wanted our day in court.
Then, Lange makes his move.
And I had a cell phone number. So I said, well, it's a stupid thing, but at least I'm doing something. I'll call it. He's not gonna have a cell. Thing rings twice, he picks up. And he sounds very tired, and he's out of it. And I said, this is Tom. What's going on?
OJ, look, I can see you on the highway right now. I see you driving.
Can't take this. Oh, yes, you can. Yes, you can. You got your whole family out here.
My only concern during this time is the loaded gun. Because somebody's gonna get killed, and now it's on me because I'm talking to the guy with the gun. So this better work.
I'm just gonna leave. I'm just gonna go with Nicole.
Your kids need you.
urge to say goodbye to my kids.
Somehow, Lange turns it all around and convinces O.J. to go home.
Everybody loves you. Don't do this.
Tom Lange was the hero of the Bronco chase because Tom Lange was on the phone with O.J. Simpson trying to convince him not to kill himself.
I felt I did the right thing. We just got lucky. He picked up the phone. I don't know.
After a 90-minute ordeal, O.J. returns home, is taken into custody, and charged with murder.
There's no question we have the case. That doesn't mean you're gonna win the trial. You're never sure of anything. Never.
The most publicized case in modern history puts O.J. Simpson and the police on trial.
This was LAPD on trial.
And forces one family to take justice into their own hands. O.J. Simpson, one of America's most beloved sports heroes, is on trial for the savage murders of his ex-wife, Nicole Simpson, and her friend, Ronald Goldman. It's the trial of the century.
You know, Americans love a good whodunit. The case brought on the combination of race and sex and drugs and celebrity, all things that just titillate we Americans.
For Kimberly Goldman, the case is not a spectacle. It's personal.
I left my life in San Francisco. I packed up my suitcase and my cat and moved into my dead brother's room in my dad's house, and I attended court every day for 9.5 months.
The prosecution tells the jury their case against O.J. Simpson is airtight.
O.J. Simpson was a wife beater.
After the divorce, the relationship continued to be difficult, and Nicole accused O.J. of basically stalking her, and so she was fearful of him.
Prosecutors tell the jury a trigger incident turned O.J. from stalker to murderer.
The night of the murder, there was a dance recital for Nicole and O.J.'s daughter.
O.J. comes a little late, and Nicole had not saved a seat for him. So some believe that he was really upset about that.
I think it was Cato who suggested that O.J. was not happy that Nicole was dressed in a tight little black dress.
Well, O.J. Simpson was obviously a very jealous man, too, and a controlling man.
After the recital, O.J.'s frustration mounts.
O.J. was mad that he didn't get invited to the Mezzaluna dinner that followed the recital.
That night, O.J. felt humiliated. So his humiliation coupled with how great she looked, that was it for him.
Later that night, after burgers with Cato, O.J. pays his ex-wife a visit.
And he's looking in on Nicole to see what she's up to. And the door opens and Nicole steps out. No shoes, slinky dress. What's going on?
According to Lange, what O.J. saw next drove him to murder.
Got these here for you.
She's in a slinky skirt waiting for her boyfriend. And this good-looking guy, Ron, comes up the street and goes in. You think that might trigger him? Ron Goldman's there just to give the glasses to her. If anything, that was a trigger.
Hey!
The prosecution's case against O.J. is supported by extensive DNA and blood evidence.
They had blood evidence. He had no alibi, he had motive, he had opportunity. They had everything against him. We were wondering if O.J. Simpson, one of the most famous men ever arrested for a double murder, was also going to face the death penalty.
While the prosecution's case is built on physical evidence, O.J.'s defense team goes after the police.
The defense case was that O.J. Simpson was framed by an LAPD with a long history of abuse and corruption, especially as it relates to the black community.
At the heart of the O.J. defense, 44-year-old homicide detective Mark Fleeman.
It was Mark Fleeman who found the infamous bloody glove.
His testimony is critical to the prosecution's case, but O.J.'s lawyers catch Fleeman in a sensational lie.
You say on your oath that you have not addressed any black person as a or spoken about black people as in the past 10 years, Detective Fleeman.
That's what I'm saying, sir.
That was manna from heaven dropped into the middle of the trial. Mark Fleeman saying on the stand that he never used the N-word, and they had all kinds of evidence to the contrary.
The proof? Fleeman's long talks with the writer, all of it caught on tape.
Anything out of the mouth for the first 5 or 6 sentences. Why?
The fact that he lied about using a racial epithet cast doubt on the finding of the glove.
The defense claims that Fleeman, motivated by racism against O.J., took a bloody glove from the crime scene at Nicole's and planted it at O.J.'s estate.
That pisses me off, okay? I get personally upset when someone accuses me or someone I've worked with of planting evidence.
Then, O.J.'s team of 11 attorneys makes one more tactical move.
Mr. Simpson was asked to put on the murder glove.
Having a problem placing the glove on his hand.
And that demonstration created a visible doubt in the minds of the jury.
The glove didn't look like it fit because it had shrunk. It was soaked in blood and then dried. Add in O.J.'s acting skills and that's what it looked like. It didn't fit.
When defense lawyers put Fleeman back on the stand to ask if he planted the glove, his statement shocks the world.
It ended with him on the stand and being asked, have you ever planted evidence in a case, in a murder case, him pleading the Fifth Amendment.
Have you ever falsified a police report?
I wish to assert my Fifth Amendment privilege.
If there was any hope for this case, that's where it died.
On the morning of October 3rd, 1995, as 142 million people watch or listen, the jury finds O.J. Simpson not guilty.
I felt betrayed and just completely in shock. And only because I believed that it was him, but I absolutely remember feeling like that jury let us down.
The jury without question freed murder. And I do blame them to that extent. They didn't do as they were instructed to do, and they didn't do their job.
2 years later, the victims' families target Simpson in a civil trial.
The big revelation during the civil trial, somebody found O.J. at a stadium, football stadium, with the Bruno Malis. They placed him at the scene.
And he was found civilly liable, responsible for the deaths in order to pay millions of dollars, which he never paid.
Kimberly Goldman and her family relentlessly pressure O.J. to pay for his crime.
And our pursuit of our civil judgment kind of caused him to storm a hotel room and steal all of his stuff back.
In September of 2007, Simpson storms a Vegas hotel room to steal a collection of sports merchandise.
For O.J., yes, there were money issues, and in the end, O.J. Simpson goes to prison for trying to steal his own sports memorabilia.
Simpson is charged with kidnapping and armed robbery and sentenced to 33 years in prison.
Yeah, that's justice, I guess, because he's now paying for his crime.
While he's angry over the outcome of the trial, Tom Lange has no regrets.
All you can do is your job, and I think we did a good job. I think we gave more than ever.
We may never know for sure whether O.J. Simpson killed Nicole Brown and Ronald Goldman, but the case will remain one of the greatest murder mysteries of our time.